this is gonna sound really weird, but I think one of the first things that I would tell an owner operator is like, are you are you having fun? Do you like where you work? Are you proud of where you work? Because I think as y'all experience and as I experience at Daffin, when you are having fun and you're proud, it makes it a lot easier to talk about how awesome your company is.
Welcome to Blue Collar Bros, a home services podcast dedicated to differentiating the best of the best within the home services industry. We are your hosts, the Yarbrough brothers. We're down a bro today.
We are down a bro.
Colby is sick. Colby, continue to fight the demons,
Get to feeling
pal.
better, buddy.
He said, give me enough potato chips, give me enough Nerf bullets, and I'll hold him off. So he's at home resting up, getting to feel better. But as always, our producer Bryce is with us, and Will is with us.
Howdy.
So today we're very excited, though. We are conducting our first virtual interview. We've had guests on the podcast before, but it's been all of our team. But today, we're bringing on an industry expert, kind of a path forger in the world of marketing, if you will. Her intro that I was told to read is mother to Chandler, a chicken tender connoisseur, and the owner and founder of True North Strategies, Mckena Harless. Mckena, how are you doing?
I didn't know I was your first virtual guest. I'm so honored. Wow. Y'all can't see it, but I'm blushing. So
You know, we talked about this before you hopped in. You know, I think we met probably 5 years ago ish through a connection with John and Vicky LaPlante, and they kind of connected us because I think we're the same age, so we're kind of coming up through the trades at the same time. Similar stories. You know, our parents were our tradies. They were forging the path in the business. And so we just kind of joined in and joined the madness that is the trades. And so I think John and Vicky, did us both a great service by making that connection and helping us see, okay, there's some other young folks in the trades. However, Bryce and I were saying it's like we were walking around that first service world where we met, and it's like, yeah, we're the youngest people here by 20 years. I mean,
yeah, for sure. So it's nice when you can find people that you're like, oh, okay, so this is a cool place to be. Like, there's a handful of us here. So, okay, cool. We'll just band together. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think we're in the same 40 under 40 class. So we're there. So, represent. We're there together. So tell us a little bit, I know kind of from a surface level, but tell us, okay, how did you get into the trades? What does your journey through Daffin look like? Through just the places you've stopped, and in what way one has the trades impacted you? In what way do you look forward to kind of impacting the trades with where you're at with True North now?
Yeah, so I can't tell my story without first doing two things, which is giving all glory to God and then just giving my parents credit for what they've done and where they brought us into the home service industry. My dad grew up in a double wide in the deserts of El Paso. We just went there the other day and I was like, this is where you grew up? This is where you came from? And so he doesn't have a college degree. He met my mom in college. They fell in love and he just followed her and they got married. And I'll never forget, he started working at a bank in a Walmart here in Granbury. And my mom was 5 months pregnant with my sister. So I was already, toddling around, and my dad came home and said, I want to be 100% sales commission at this air conditioning company. So I quit my job. And so once my mom finished crying and freaking out for a little bit because she's like, how are we going to make money? But okay. He went to go work for this air conditioning company. And then eventually he and a buddy that he worked with, started their own air conditioning company. So my dad was a sales manager, and then my dad worked there for 10 years as like sales and like general manager, I guess would be the best way to put it, after a little while. And then my dad purchased the company from him. And that's what y'all know as like Daffin Cooling and Heating is that company. And so my dad worked there for 10 years. And so I grew up there. Like I'll never forget going to the office. And my sister and I, elementary, middle school, we were thinking we're doing dad a favor by like, I was so excited to clean off the dry erase board. I'll never forget that. And then also like trying to help clean up my dad's desk, which I later found out when I got older, that was actually his worst nightmare because it was organized chaos. And so leaving him little post-it notes all over his desk, like, love you, daddy, like you're the best. But that's all that I had the exposure to, was like going to his office, interacting with these like blue collar guys that smelled like a little greasy. Maybe didn't say the cleanest words. And so like that's just like the limited exposure that I had, was just this like these guys that I was seeing and interacting with on limited experiences. And then, when you graduate from college, you think like, oh, like, do I want to work there? No, like that doesn't seem cool. I wanted to go work at, my degree was in communication, because as y'all will experience during this podcast, I love to talk. And so I got the major.
Oh, I think we lost your mic. Something happened with the headphone. Maybe.
I'm glad we're not the only ones.
We got you now.
I
Hey,
heard her just then. Yeah.
Hey, authenticity. I'm glad is just a core value of yours and part of your mission statement. Because that same with us. Also, we're amateurs doing this on the fly.
Well, good. We'll figure it out together. I'm really glad you're not videoing this, because I'm all shades of red, because I'm like, I just want to get this right for you guys.
You're good.
You are on video.
Am I? Oh no.
You know what? I'll take the blame for that. Maybe I should have clarified it's a video podcast.
Yeah, add that to your notes, Bryce, to let me know.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine. At least I haven't picked my nose or anything yet.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Nobody could walk behind me. We're not gonna have, anything embarrassing in there. But yeah, so I went to school, majored in talking, and wanted to graduate. I wanted to work somewhere cool. Like I grew up in a small town, so I was applying to places like Denver and Nashville. I wanted to go work for PR agencies. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I was too cool to move back to my small town.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a brief amount of time, I moved home to live with mom and dad, while I finished applying to all these cool jobs. And then the Lord humbled me, is what happened. And my dad ended up just casually coming home one day and saying, hey, our marketing director needs an assistant. Do you want to apply? And he was very specific. You have to apply. You can't just assume that you're going to get the job. And so I applied and I interviewed and I got the job after taking a big pill of humility. And so yeah, it was really awesome that I got to work there and just see like what all the secret world of the home service industry involves. My dad was already a part of one of the best practice groups, Service Nation Alliance. And so he, from there, invited me to some of the events. And so I got to go to these conferences with thousands of people and just see that there's like this like cutting edge industry piece, and there's just all sorts of exciting things happening. And so I got to meet so many friends like you, Tucker, and like eventually your brothers, and Bryce, you and I got to meet. And I'm like, dang, like there's just this whole secret world, which is how I describe it. And then, yeah, it's just been really fun. I think what I realized at DAFN, and then even now in the industry, is to come from the outside in. A lot of these technicians, whether they were actually born into it like I was or not, like they probably feel like it after like 16 years of working in their business. And so what was fun for me, and I didn't realize it was a benefit, was to come from outside the industry in and get to bring like this different perspective and this different level of excitement, to show people like, hey, I know that you feel like you're in the trenches, and I know like you don't feel like this is fun, but this is fun, and this is like you are a part of like changing things. And so it was really awesome getting to do that. So just excited to continue to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think so. So you kind of hit on something before that I got a chance to talk to your mom and your dad. I think before I met you is how I think the order of events happened.
What it was at this last service world actually that we got to sit down and talk with mom and dad, Peregrino.
Yeah.
without Mckena in the room.
Yeah, it was great. McKenna's like flashing through going, what stories were told?
Yeah, they teach a
But it
parenting
was.
class and here, and they'll tell all sorts of stories about me to these parents. And so I'll be like in and around town, and they'll be like, "Hey, are you Mckena Peregrino?" Because that's my maiden name. I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Oh, we heard all these stories about you in this class." I'm like, oh, "Okay, good. Glad we could get to know each other. Glad we could get to know each other."
So
Yeah.
I need to move. Got it.
Yeah, basically.
So you touched on something. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I think something I was always impressed with, just initially, like whenever I met your family, was just how integrated their family was with the business, but also too, is it coupled with their faith. And so I think it was so similar to our story. I'm curious to see like how all of that interplay worked as you grew up. Like, just kind of tell us a little bit about like how your faith impacted your parents and your parents as they did business, and what that taught you, you know, as someone who was coming into the trades from the outside a little bit, and then, you know, and you've got your own faith, you know, there too, and how that has influenced how you are doing what you're doing now.
Yeah. I'll never forget growing up, my dad would do things, and so for example, we moved out to the country when I was in like middle school, and I remember getting so mad because we were going to go to a really small school, and versus all my friends were going to continue to go to the big public schools, and they would have classes together, and they would know each other and all these things. And so I I'll never forget just the arguments that we would have. And I'd be like, "You're gonna make us weird. You're gonna make us weird." And and oh my gosh, I get so mad. I'm like, "I'm not gonna get a boyfriend. I'm not gonna have any friends." And I remember my dad just walking us through the conversations as far as like, well, what does God call us to? Like, God calls us to be set apart, and set apart is just a biblical language for being weird. And so therefore, like, you are going to need to be weird. But that's what God has called us to, and God promises that there is a purpose and a plan for that. And so that was kind of like our family motto, and still is. Trey, my husband, and I even kind of carry that through, is that now, like, as we make decisions for our family, it's like, well, that's not really normal, but like, isn't that the whole point of, like, following Christ? And then yeah, I think just trusting God's plan, like especially when my dad bought the company, like that's scary. And so I remember, as far as how my dad integrated it into the company and into our lives, was one of their core values was faith. And we always clarified, like, you don't have to be a believer, but you just need to know that that's what we're going to base those decisions around, is what does God call us to do in the Bible. And so for example, we had a widows maintenance program, and that was off of a verse in First Timothy, which talks about taking care of the widows in your community. And that was because we knew that God had blessed our business, and so therefore, like, it was our responsibility to go and bless others. And so a lot of just like that being carried through in the company. And so then now, like, when I started my own business, it was okay, is this what God has called me to? Is this where I can glorify God and use the skills that he's given me? Is this where I can be weird and different than everybody else? And so just being obedient, once I felt like, after a lot of prayer and wise counsel, the answer was yes. So here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool.
I love that. I want to ask, given your history, we kind of brushed a little bit up on that, but take us back to entering back into the trades. You started, hitting the ground running, learning marketing. Talk about what you have learned from that place in your life to where you are now, the owner of True North Strategies, and kind of how that helps you work with your clients today.
I'll never forget when I started working the business. My dad was so busy, and I'll expose him right now. And if he was when he watches this and when he listens to it, he'll shake his head and giggle, I hope. But we always would gauge my dad's stress level on how short his thumbnail is. So if y'all ever get to see my dad in public, just look at his thumbnail. And if it's really short, that's because, like, he's like focusing all his nervous energy on like this one thumbnail. And so we would give him such a hard time as kids, like, Dad, stop picking your thumb. But then when I went to go work in the business, I began to learn how stressful it is to run a trades business, because you're just dealing with this constant battle of like operations and customer service and relationships and building a team and what's happening with equipment and what customer is angry and oh yeah, I need to go put a billboard up. Oh yeah, the board's empty and I don't have any calls to run, so now I got to pay this overhead. I got to pay health insurance. These people can take care of their
She's stressing me out just by listing everything off. I'm like, this is my day to day. I'm
and I especially as I started working in marketing for contractors, like later on, I would get so annoyed with contractors because I'd be like, why aren't they focused on their marketing? And my dad showed me, he had made this graphic of all of these cogs of a machine, and they each had one different thing on it. So like the list I just listed off. So at the center was the biggest cog, which was the owner. And then you had all these tinier cogs in and around it, interlinked of like I said, payroll, scheduling, uh, install team, sales ratio, all this stuff. And he said, this is what an owner operator is thinking about all of the time. And then you have marketing is like one of those cogs. And so it was just really eye-opening for me to realize that not only does he, but owner operators have so much on their plate. And so that's where when I got to be part of the marketing at Daffin, and then now that I own True North, which spoiler alert, my function at True North is the best way to summarize it, is I operate as your fractional CMO is the best way to put it. And so that's been my heart's passion. And I end every email to my clients this way is let me know how I can make your life easier. Because I understand and I remember so clearly like the frustration that my sister and my mom and I had. It gets me, maybe it's pregnancy hormones, but it gets me a little choked up even right now. My dad pointed out to a friend of ours who was basically on the path to be a workaholic. He pointed out a scrapbook that we had that my mom had put together of all of our summer vacations as kids. And he said, what do you notice about this? And the guy didn't get it. But my dad said, I'm not in a single one of those pictures. And his point was that, you know, this business being, especially in HVAC being so seasonally driven, there was a lot that he missed because he was dealing with the stress and the pressure of being an owner operator. And so for me, working in the marketing piece, it's like, okay, what of this 20%, let's say, of the energy that you would focus on marketing, let me take that so that hopefully you can put that 20% towards your family or lowering your stress level or put it towards your operations so that at the end of the day, when you get home, you have one less thing to think about so that you can then be present with your family, with your spouse, or just as you're running or like going to exercise or going on vacation. Like if you can go on vacation because you know that I've got your marketing and everybody else in your team has all the operational stuff, that makes me super happy because I know that I've done my job right. And so therefore you can live a more peaceful, fulfilled life because you don't have to worry as much. Because Tucker, as you mentioned.
Yeah, you got to keep a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the thing that a lot of operators, you know, is there's this tension that I think every business lives in. But I don't know, you know, there's in Oklahoma City metro area, and I know that the Dallas metro area is even more. But OKC metro area has 3,500 registered contractors. And so it's every technician, it's like what the E-Myth talks about. It's like having a entrepreneurial seizure. So there's a lot of people who go try to hang their shingles. So there's this tension of like, oh, the operator's got it, so good. And then the operator, a lot of times, pending that they have the systems in place, that they have, a Bryce or a Mckena in place, or they have, their service managers where they need them to be, or their sales team. Unless they have that structure set up, the operator is thinking, oh my gosh, what I wouldn't give to just get back in the field. Like there are days that I think about that I'm like, I think I just want to grab a tool bag and go handle one customer at a time. Like,
Hey, and I'm glad you don't.
yeah. Well, I'll tell him myself. So we had a cold snap here in Oklahoma. I think you guys got a little bit of it. We were down to like 0 and 4 degrees for the last 3 or 4 days.
It's like negative 20 wind chill.
Yeah, we had minus 20 wind chills, and so it was good times.
Yeah.
And mine and my wife's house is a barn dominium. We've got 3 big garage doors in our house. And 2 weeks ago, so my toolbox on my truck has been broken, and I haven't ran a service call since 2017. I haven't ran a sales call since 2020. At this point in time, it's a detriment to the company if I do either of those things. And so I was like, you know what? I got to get this broken toolbox off of my truck. I'll consolidate. I'll pare down to a tool pouch, and then I'll put the rest of my tools in the shop. And wouldn't you know it, the first day of the cold snap, my emergency heat isn't coming on, and I don't have any of my tools. And so I climb up my attic. I've got my amp probe, but throw my amp probe on and realize, shoot, my heat strips aren't turning on. So I text my service manager, and I was like, hey, I need to, I need to be put on the service schedule. And he said, nope, we got it. He said, ... you gave up your tool bag 2 weeks too early, huh? And then so all I hit him with was the Jim Halpert gif of Jim laying back in his seat. And so, but without that structure, there's a lot of times where, the owner operator is having to run around and put out, dad still does. But I think Dad gets his kicks doing that too. Yeah. So runs around and puts out those fires because he built the business. There's still that small, and I'm sure your dad was the same way. That small handful of clients, even here towards the end of his run, and kind of not even into his run, but the business has grown to a degree where it's like that handful of clients. They're not dictating the whole business anymore. Mm-hmm. But he's still handling those guys. So whenever you stepped in, I'm sure that you went through some, tensionous times with kind of what you wanted to do with the marketing department and where you wanted to take it, things like that. But you guys, it sounds like y'all are kind of in a little bit of a different situation at Daffin when you stepped in you already had a marketing director in place. So I was our marketing director, and then I brought Bryce in. But I remember having conversations with Dad, and it's not unlike, I coach a few, other HVAC companies, and it's not unlike the conversations I have with them. I think it's easier because they're, not my dad, and I have no skin in the game. But having the conversations of, okay, here's the things we need to do in marketing. Here's the things that we need to do to help grow and fill the board and help our brand, things like that. Do you have any specific kind of like, nuggets of wisdom or things that you guys, tackle that might help that entrepreneur, that operator who's at that, $1 to $3 or $3 to $5 million stage where it's like, hey, I know it seems impossible to do X, but if you do this one thing or do these couple of things well, because it's not that one thing, it's a lot of small things done consistently, but it will help unlock some time, it'll help decrease some stress, things like that. Anything in mind in that regard?
This is gonna sound really weird, but I think one of the first things that I would tell an owner operator is like, are you having fun? Do you like where you work? Are you proud of where you work? Because I think as y'all experience and as I experience at Daffin, when you are having fun and you're proud, it makes it a lot easier to talk about how awesome your company is. Ryan Shute at Wizards of Ads just told a client of mine, like, asked her, are you operating from a mentality of surviving versus thriving? And so if you're just trying to survive, the way in which you're going to approach talking about your business, approach marketing is going to be a lot different than versus if you have a thriving mentality. You may not be thriving, and that's okay, but that is how you should approach your marketing. And so just on a practical level, some of the basics that I encourage my clients to have is like a minor social media plan. And what I mean by minor is like you're posting 3 times a week, and it's just pictures from your guys in the field. It's pictures from you. Maybe you post 2 videos a month. Like, don't try and shoot for the stars. Don't follow like Daffin social media or Yarborough and Sons and think that you have to be pumping out all this content. Just start with the basics. And then I really enjoy looking at where you can do like boots on the ground guerrilla marketing. And if you hang out with my dad too, you know that I came by that idea naturally. We're big fans of guerrilla marketing because it's cheap. Now the thing that I'll say is the hardest part for contractors in guerrilla marketing is that it does take some of the most effort. So for example, running through the list of, do you have the basics? Do you have yard signs? Do you have door hangers? Do you have fridge magnets? Like, do you have those? And business cards is a fourth one, but yard signs. So do you put yard signs out? Do your technicians put yard signs out? Do you have a process for how you put yard signs out? Because that's just a mini rolling billboard, right? As y'all know, y'all do a great job of putting your yard signs out. Door hangers. Are your technicians going to every house and putting out a door hanger? And just those basic pieces that really work to help to spread the brand very cheaply. You can get a thing of business cards for 100 business cards for $25 off Vistaprint. Versus I think what a lot of contractors want to do is they want to look at like the big shiny things, and those are really expensive, like billboards, pay per click. But the thing that's really enticing about those types of marketing is that they're easy. It's just set it and forget it for the most part. And so I like to challenge my clients of, hey, I think we can cover a lot of ground with like these basic printed collateral pieces and like some community work. Can you schedule out an hour to go to, if you're doing new construction, can you go to like a home builders association? Can you go to a realtor association breakfast and like sponsor it and give a little spiel, hand them out a bunch of postcards that say free tune-ups on them and tell them they can hand them out to their clients? And so I like to encourage my contractors to go back to the basics of where you're just like knocking on doors, shaking hands, kissing babies. It's the most uncomfortable, but a lot of times it's the place that you can get the cheapest leads with the highest ROI, because a lot of it is just like is really generating those like word of mouth referrals, while at the same time generating more brand awareness because you're just putting your stuff everywhere. So I could go on, but that's what I would say I see my clients forget the most about, because they get too lost in the shiny things. So
I love that. I love everything you just said about guerrilla marketing, and I think that you really nailed the trade-off. If there is something, sorry, I'm hearing myself speak. Give me a second. The trade-off with the trade-off with guerrilla marketing, like doing door hangers. We just bought a batch of 2,000 door hangers. We got through about 1,200 of them, but that cost us $300. But it required a whole lot of effort from our technicians. We had nothing for them to do for a few days. The calls were low. So I was sending them out into neighborhoods that we wanted to work into and having them put out those door hangers. And so, like I said, got through 1,200 in just about 2 work days with a few groups of our technicians. So you're working with a trade-off of like what's costly and what takes effort. And I think you're correct in thinking that a lot of these contractors who are in that $1 million to $3 million, $5 million range could really be putting more focus on not having a huge marketing budget, but putting forth a community effort. Buying food for the community, or putting out door hangers or putting out the yard signs. I think that's really the trade-off people have to focus on.
And I'll even push on the thought that this is for that 1 to 3 or 3 to 5. We rediscovered this at 10. Yeah. Because once you get a marketing budget rolling and you get to a place where you can start spending money and do so effectively, the reality is it's like we forget to go to the basics. We forget to be doing the small things well. And so that's where I was like, when I touched on it just a second ago, it's a bunch of small things done consistently that build the backbone of the marketing plan. Because like at 10, we had to rediscover, okay, we've had a good plan for yard signs, but we never really had a good plan for how we handle our door hangers and things like that. So it's don't outsmart simple. And I think the temptation with marketing is always you're chasing the shiny object. From the vendor side, and this as well as we do because you managed some vendor relationships while you were at Daffin. The thought process of the client, the operator in the field, versus the thought process of the vendor who there's a lot of great vendors who may not come from the trades or have a perspective of what it is to operate a trades business. The two thought process, the two camps are almost incongruent with one another, because a marketing vendor, a lot of times may be pushing hey, we can get, a ton of views, a ton of impressions, a ton of traffic through this one funnel. Yep. But the operator's like, well, peanuts, man, I have to fill the board. And so we have this tension of what can we do that's radical. So one of the things that we've been doing, you talked about the business cards that have like a free tune-up, is we've kind of circumvented that and started using social media to the way that we need to use it. We want it to work for us. And we've started doing live streams every Friday. Takes 45 minutes. We do a live stream. We're giving away a free maintenance membership, a free tune-up, a free water heater flush. And then if you text us during that time, you can get a free service call. And then we're constantly running free tune-up ads and campaigns all over Facebook because, like you said, it's guerrilla marketing gone virtual. But it's things that you would do. You'd offer those via a door hanger or a business card. Yeah. But it feels scary to put it out on the internet that it's like, oh, we're going to offer this for free. And so it's
do the small things well.
And I think we play the war game often. And Mckena, I don't know if you get in this headspace of like, we're always thinking, what's the worst thing that could happen? It feels like you're opening the floodgates for a lot of customers to take advantage of like this really cheap offer, this free offer. It's like, no, that's actually a great situation to be in. I hope we get more during our 45-minute live streams. I hope we get inundated with more customers than we know what to do with, giving free stuff away, because that's an acquisition savings. Like, you're saving so much money on acquiring these customers. Doing a Facebook Live is absolutely free. And so...
Yeah, and I think simple things done consistently trump big ideas done intermittently. So, and like what I mean by that too is like, so for the Facebook Live example, you can, it doesn't take a whole lot of like, there's not a lot of obstacles in your way to do the Facebook Live. There's not a whole lot of things in your way to do that. So contractors that are like Mckena, like what you're talking about, they've got a lot of balls in the air. They're trying to juggle all of these different things. Finding something simple that they can do consistently is going to trump this like big sort of idea that they're going to try to implement. But there's a lot of like little bitty things in their way. But if you can keep it simple, and concise and do it consistently, I'm not involved in the marketing other than the fact that like Tucker and Bryce are like, hey, Will, we need you for a video. And I'm like, okay, it sounds great. Let's do it. Or these conversations. Yeah. Or like, yeah, what do you think about this? But I'm with Colby a lot. I'm on the sales side. So a lot of the marketing strategy, come from Tucker and Bryce, and it's kind of like, sounds great. So I think someone in your position that has the background of being in a trades business, but also too, now you're trying to like, hey, how can I make your life easier? I think that's a really good combo for someone in your position.
So sorry, go ahead.
Well, and so I was just going to add, like, y'all have hit on it each individually is like the plan. And that's what I think, even with the door hangers, like I'll tell a client, hey, let's get door hangers, or I'll ask a client, hey, do you have yard signs? And they'll say yes. And then I like, and for some, like, that's enough, just to say, like, ask, and they'll call it a good, especially as a vendor, like they'll just call it a day. Like, oh, okay, you have yard signs, like, yay me, like, I'm your marketing person, I did a good job. But that's why I like to take it, like, I like to say I'm your fractional CMO, because if you had an in-office marketing director, she's not just going to be satisfied with like, oh, we have a pile of yard signs in the marketing closet now. She's going to want to know, or he, like, wait, what are we doing with those? What's our plan for those? And so just like y'all talked about, like, it wasn't enough just to say, hey, we have these door hangers. You have to come up with a plan, and also to accommodate for the different personalities. So yesterday I talked to a client, and we were going to send out a $89 tune-up text message to a 2-year client list. And the CSR had come to my client and was like, we can't send this out. And she was like, why not? And she said, because there's all sorts of customers on here that it's wrong. And like, we've never serviced some of these people. And blah. She had all these concerns about what was going to happen. Worst case scenario, like you talked about, Bryce. And so I told her, I said, I think you have to consider, and she was frustrated. I said, I think you have to consider her personality a little bit, that she's on the CSR side. And so all she's seeing, and it, depending upon her personality, like, she's seeing the potential for conflict, the potential for some uncertain conversations of when a customer is going to call and say, hey, why did I get this text message? I already booked a tune-up. Or hey, I booked my tune-up 2 weeks ago and I paid $119, and now you're offering it for $89. And so I said, maybe let's look at writing her a script of, hey, and we can't cover all the bases, and we have to tell her that, hey, we'll do the best that we can to prepare you, but we can't cover all the bases. But we understand that this is going to be something new and uncomfortable, and so here's our plan for how that goes. So it requires the owner operator to be a little bit more prepared, in the sense that, like, you can't just say, hey, we hand out yard signs now. It's like, okay, like maybe you say, hey, just so you know, me and my marketing gal, we're working on yard signs 1 week in the team meeting. And then like 2 weeks later, it's like, hey, we ordered the yard signs. They'll be here in 2 weeks. And then in that 2 weeks, you're working on training them on how to ask the customer, can I put a yard sign in your yard? And then 2 weeks later, you give them the yard signs, and now you have a whole plan that they can carry out. So
I think you got to break some eggs. I think just to speak real quickly, we are just now getting to the place where our comms team has kind of gotten calloused to the amount of changes and to dealing with uncertainty, because I answer the questions the same way every time. It's like, well, what if this, what if that, what if this? I'm like, we'll just deal with it.
We'll just make it happen.
We'll just have to work with it.
Well, and Bryce and I, we live in this tension where, a lot of times, not to say that, Will, Colby, or Bryce, don't come up with marketing ideas, but like a lot of times, I'm a big idea guy.
Yeah.
So
I'll give you that. Yeah.
I'll come up. I got 1,000 ideas a minute of how we can fill the board, how we can do something. And so I've had to learn, strategically, of like, I can't float ideas. There's an embargo on Tucker's ability to speak to the team about ideas that are less than 3/4 baked.
Yeah.
Because if I do, it creates a bunch of unnecessary uncertainty. Because in my head, a lot of times I'm vetting an idea. When I'm pitching it, I'm trying to work through it myself. I'm
raw ingredients, as you say.
Yeah, I'm giving you raw ingredients. That's my, a lot of the team knows that's my vernacular is, I've got something half baked, or hey, I'm giving you raw ingredients here. I'm not sure what this looks like. But as an operator, like, you have to kind of know, okay, who's the inner circle that I can tell this to, and who can't I tell it to? And I think a lot of times I was too liberal with what I was sharing, and it was causing unnecessary uncertainty. Whereas now, with Will, Colby, and Bryce, I'll start just pitching ideas into our service managers and stuff. I'll start pitching ideas, and they know maybe 15 to 20% of them will stick.
Well, it works too, because it starts from the top, trickles its way down, and all the best ideas that make it to the bottom are the winners. Yeah. And so Tucker just needs to basically stay quiet about 95% of the time and share the top 5% of his ideas, and we're doing awesome.
Yeah. And you touched on it, though, that I want to circle to is you actually like hit on it just perfectly. That was my next question I had queued up, was so coming from DAF and through your marketing journey to now running True North, you are on the same page as us, because we've talked about this. Marketing and operations are married. There is no you can have great marketing, but poor operations. It's I can't remember who said it, but it's bad marketing makes a good product fail.
I think that's Ogilvy.
So the inverse of that is true. So it's, even if you have great marketing but poor operations, like, you're going to fail even faster, because now we're bringing a bunch of clients in, but we're not able to service them. Or the inverse, if we don't have enough marketing, then if we have the greatest operations in the world, if no one's ever heard of you, it doesn't matter. And so there's this tension of the two. Like, a lot of times I think we try to silo them into their own buckets, but in all reality, I bet I'm going to throw a dart and bet, and you correct me if I'm wrong. A large portion of what you do at True North is influencing the operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I had a client, and if he listens to this, I love you. I went up to his office because I love an on-site. There's nothing better than an on-site visit. And so I went up to his office to do his planning for 2025. And so we sit down. I'm like, okay, what are we doing for 2025? And he goes, I want to grow by. It was like a huge goal, and I said, okay. So how are we going to get there? And I knew what the answer was going to be. And he goes, you're going to grow it by like $2 million. And I was like, okay.
Can I get a cut?
Yeah. I said, okay, well, before we talk about marketing, what's your sales conversion rate for your salesman right now? And so he pulls up his spreadsheet, and it was 50%. And I knew that the ideal conversion rate is like at least 70%, 85%, like somewhere in there. And so I knew, okay, and I mentioned it to him. I said, okay, I will go balls to the wall on your marketing, but you need to work on that a little bit. Like, why is it so low? And so we've been talking through that a little bit as far as what can we do to incentivize his salesman more? What can we do to help his presentation? Does he need better materials? Does he need some scripting? Does he need some training? Here, I have these really great sales trainers that I know of that I can refer you to. And then, like I talked about with the yard signs, I went on another on-site. If this client is listening, I love you too. And I was this one, I was taking some photos for their marketing. And so the owner wasn't there. It was just his two technicians. They had two separate trucks. And I said, hey, I want to take a picture of you next to your yard sign. Can you hand me a yard sign? And they both looked at me and they were like, we don't have any yard signs on our truck.
Oh
And I was like,
no.
excuse me? And they were like, but if he asks, we do. We have big old piles of yard signs in our trucks. And so yeah, so you're exactly right that I knew I had designed a really great yard sign for them and I had ordered them, but they had not carried through on the plan piece of holding them accountable. And so that is the piece that I enjoy the most is I'm not just a project manager of your marketing. I'm not just going to send out an email with some offers. I'm not just going to order you a yard sign or put up a billboard. Like, I want to talk about what happens after, because like you said, I know too, I don't want to create this amazing experience for your customers where we have this beautiful billboard and we have these super awesome social media and we have this great commercial it's got this jingle and it's awesome. And then they call and their experience from that point forward is lackluster. And so I want to help own that next portion so that we know that it's all consistent, a good, consistent experience.
I want to hit on the yard sign thing one more time because I compare it to billboards. It is arguably much easier to design a billboard and sign a contract, let it roll for the months that you have paid for it, and it's just going to be easy. It's going to be up next to the highway. I would rather have yard signs. We learned this pretty quickly. We doubled down, maybe tripled down on our yard sign budget just because I'd rather own the neighborhood instead of owning the highways. Now, of course, I want us everywhere. I want branding impressions everywhere I can get them, but I don't think there's a better impression than your neighbor having our yard sign in their yard.
And we say something quippy on our yard signs. We'll have the logo, we'll have our heating, cooling, plumbing on phone number on one side, and on the back, depending on the season, it may be coolest house on the block or coziest home around or hey, you're awesome. Like just
something that's more memorable than just
Yarbrough and Sons. It's something that gets you to look a little bit longer. But Bryce mentioned our budget for yard signs. I'm a big believer in what gets rewarded gets repeated. And so on the yard sign thing, we stole it. We didn't come up with this. We stole it from Hobica, but we incentivize the guys to put yard signs out. So we'll give a $20 spiff if they put a yard sign out. The customer then gets a $50 discount on their service for that day. So we're factoring in. We know how many yard signs we can buy for the year, and then at this customer now, all maintenance members they get a yard sign no matter what. That's just part of the gig. But if it's a service call, the tech says, "Hey, here's the price. Here's the the repairs, whatever. If you'd allow me to put a yard sign in your yard, I can actually take $50 off today's call. All we ask is that you leave the yard sign in the yard for 2 weeks. After that, you can throw it away, stick it in your neighbor's yard. We just don't want it back." Everybody says yes. Most people forget that it's in their yard for more than 2 weeks, and you have to operate with a lot of trust. That's like that customer, because you gave them some money off, they've got some skin in the game. More often than not, they're going to leave it out there for longer than 2 weeks. And I think that's for me initially, that was part of the uncertainty of like, they're just going to, because I think of what I would do. And I'm like, I'm probably going to say, okay. And then, more often than not, I'm probably just going to say no for like a yard sign. But like, I'd just be like, yeah, sounds great. And then I'd go take it out later that day or something. But most people, that's not going to be the case. Most people, it's like, yeah, all right, we'll play the game. And so what gets rewarded gets repeated in a big way. Because that's something, Bryce and I'm sure you see this a lot too, is when we talk to other contractors, I almost don't want to talk about marketing until I know that what your booking rate is, what your close percentage is, and how many calls per day you actually need to be running per technician, per salesperson, and so on. Because if I can't with any confidence, like prognosticate where we actually need to be, then discussing marketing is nothing more than vanity metrics. It's no different than talking about revenue. Revenue is fun to talk about, but unless we're having some major pass through and double-digit profits, it's a really hard conversation to actually steer the direction that we need to go. So I think probably final question here.
I've got one more.
You've got one more? Okay, go ahead, Will. I'll save mine for last. I'll save mine for last. We'll tee it up.
So I think we've been pretty heavy like in the weeds and marketing stuff. So I'm gonna kind of bring it back up to the surface just a little bit. So Mckena, I've got a question for you. Okay, so I've got 3 young kids. So mine are 2, 5, and 8. And so with you guys in Chandler, you grew up watching your dad like be in the trades, do the whole stuff. As Chandler's coming up, what would be your future advice for Chandler? Like, say she wants to get involved. She sees you guys, and where I'm kind of going with this question would be like, all right, someone younger, maybe in high school, that's like wanting to maybe consider the trades. What would be kind of like, hey, this would be some advice I would have as you pursue this, or maybe like say, hey, like this might not be an aspect of the trades that you've thought about that maybe you would consider.
Oh my gosh.
So I said I'm coming up. I'm just pivoting to like family stuff.
I love that question. So again, I'll give credit to my mom and dad. My dad wanted to start implementing personality profiling at Daffin, and who did he test it out on first? Our family. And so we became, and if you talk to my dad, if he doesn't talk about it, he's thinking about your DISC profile. And if you haven't heard about it, DISC, DISC.
He on the dot. I met Palm Springs probably 5 years ago. He hit me just right on the head. I mean, he diagnosed who I was to a T. So he's good at it.
Yeah. So the reason why I bring that up is what that allowed for us to do, because my dad started using it in high school when my sister and I were in high school. So at that point, we were really starting to figure out, Hannah and I, what we were good at, what we were, our skills and things like that. And so it allowed us to really say, okay, this is who I am, and these are the gifts and the skills that I have. And so what can I do with them? Is really the conversations that we started having as a family. It's like, okay, and dreaming. I was a big people person. So my senior year of high school, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. Because this is just very like senior year of high school mentality I was like, well, how can I talk to people every day? And I was like, oh, a nurse, that would be fun. Well, then what I didn't realize was that I'd have to go to college and study science every day. And it was horrible. And so then I learned just through my skill set that I was like, oh, I heard about this communication degree. I love to communicate. Let's go study that. So to answer your question, Will, in kind of a weird way, is like, I would encourage Chandler and any, a high school student, like, let's sit down and talk about, what do you love to do? What are the gifts and skills that God has given you that are contrary to your peers? And then talking about like, what could you do with those, and empowering them? Because again, talking about the trades, I think people have a poor perception of, especially like the technicians, the plumbers. I love bragging about the fact that I have some technician plumber friends that are making 6 figures because it's so unexpected, because all they're thinking is like of sweaty HVAC techs in attics and like plumbers dealing with poo-poo. And so I love to talk about how like I can see the home service industry is creating a place where there's like professionalism and a career and growth that you can be a part of. And I have a lot of high school friends that I go to church with that they don't want to go to college. They know that they don't have the skills to sit through 4 years worth of classes and write 4 years worth of papers. And so to talk to them about, hey, first of all, let's talk about what it looks like to be weird, to be contrary to your peers that are going to go to college, and that is okay. And let's talk about the possibilities of what kind of skills has God given you? Like, do you just want a stable job? I have one friend, her dream job is to be a church secretary. So I knew, like, when we talked about what kind of job she was going to get, I wasn't going to be pushing her to like go apply for a sales job. I knew like, okay, she's just a cute little high S, speaking disc speak for a second. She's just a cute little high S that wants a very stable job. So like CSR work, stuff like that is going to be ideal for her. Really good with numbers, maybe really logical. Like maybe she can be an accountant. She can go work at a HVAC plumbing electrical company that's just growing and needs another, they need help with their accounts receivable. And so just really looking at, I would say, and Trey and I already talk about it, like how can we empower Chandler that when she is in high school thinking about her career, she has no qualms about saying, I don't want to go to college. I want to go, work for an HVAC company. I want to be a technician. Like, girl, let's go. Like I'll call all my friends. We'll get you trained. Let's go.
Hey, if that happens, just send her north a couple hundred miles to the good old folks at Yarbrough and Sons, and we'd be happy to have her on board.
Well, and it's funny too because my kids, my kids like they have this idea that like they love like cooking stuff, and so they're like they have this dream of like we're gonna open a restaurant. I'm like, guys, that sounds good. I said, we need a business degree. We need to like let's do this, And so they're like, we're on it. We got this. Like, all right, great. But I think you hit on that really well. It's like, hey, finding those things. Like, what are you passionate about? How has God gifted you? And then where do those things meet in a skill or a job, and kind of finding different areas? Because I think there's this idea that it's like, I don't know, maybe I just had this, but it was like, I was made to do one thing, and it was I have to find the thing. But it's like, man, there's so many opportunities.
That's really existential. That sounds really stressful
I
for
know,
you.
Yeah. Welcome to my mind, man. Yeah.
Finding what you're passionate about is awesome. I think with the influencer culture right now, we're getting a little too caught up in that piece a little bit. Like we forget about the other aspects, which is like, this is called work for a reason, because like it's work. It's not going to feel super comfortable. And so I think we've kind of forgotten to instill that in not only ourselves, like as the younger generations, but then we're also forgetting to do it to like those that are coming up as well. So they assume that work shouldn't feel like work. If it's your passion, it shouldn't feel like work. And it's like, well, this is called work for a reason. And so I think sometimes that's why people, again, like don't see the awesomeness of the home service business, is because they're like, do I want to go to an office day in and day out? Do I want to go work out in the field day in and day out? Well, if you find a company that has an amazing culture and you have an amazing job with great benefits, like that in and of itself is a blessing. And so I think trying to balance, like, yes, this is what I am made for, and this is what I'm excited and passionate about. But at the same time, like, it's still going to feel like work, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
That's great.
So I think final question for you is if somebody out there listening wants to get a hold of you, wants to learn more, what is the best way to get a hold of you, to interact with you, and to potentially bring on Mckena at True North as their fractional CMO?
So I have a website. You can go to, it has all my contact info, because I'm not super fancy. So that's my cell phone number on my website. It's www.picktruenorth.com. And again, just to summarize it, like I am your fractional CMO. I want to manage all of your marketing, take that off of your plate. And so we come up with a marketing plan, and I act and manage all of your vendor partners so that you don't have to, so that you can have more time to focus on everything else. And so, yeah, picktruenorth.com. You can email me, text me, call me, beep me if you want to reach me.
Easier than impossible.
That was so good. And do you have a book recommendation for contractors out there that could help kind of refine kind of some of these thoughts, what direction they want to move? Any book, any podcast recommendation out there?
Oh my gosh. E-Myth, I know, is a huge one that changes a lot of lives. There's a book, it's of the DISC profile. It's called Personality Profiles. And then as far as a podcast goes, I'm gonna shout out my boy Eric at Rival Digital with the Trademark Podcast, because he's just a phenomenal human, but then also it's just a phenomenal podcast. And then anything with Ryan Shute at Wizards of Ads. So they help build brands and stuff like that too.
Perfect.
Nice.
Well, Mckena, thank you so much for joining Blue Collar Bros today. We hope to have you back in the future. And guys, tune in to our next one. Like, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know your thoughts, and maybe who you'd like to see next. Have a great one. Let's get out of here.
Awesome. Thanks, McKenna.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.